So there's a phrase that gets used a lot these days, which is that the PM is the CEO of the product. Do you agree or disagree with that phrase, and why?
Overall, I would agree with the phrase. I would say, it's not perfectly exactly right, but it's a really good phrase for setting the context of a lot of the scope of responsibilities that a PM will have.
Okay.
One thing that a mentor of mine frequently said to me was, if your product isn't successful, it's your fault as the PM of that product. Like, whatever's going wrong, you need to understand why that component is impacting the success of the product. Mm-hmm. And it may be the sales team, it may be something else that is actually executing on the component that's not doing well. But it's your responsibility as a product manager to kind of coordinate those components and understand how they will influence the success or failure of the product. And so from that perspective, I think saying someone's the CEO of a product is fairly accurate.
Yeah.
You can make arguments that, in reality, the responsibilities you have and your influence is not really the full end-to-end of a product. I particularly see this in my current role, where I don't have a lot of influence over how the sales team sells the product. And so in reality, I don't have that CEO role because sales is completely out of my hands. And honestly, I don't get an opportunity to really influence how they even present the product to customers. But at the end of the day, I think it's good for context setting of what you need to set yourself up for if you're going to work in the area of product management.
So you're basically saying it captures the overall sentiment well of the job, and that you're going to have to do a bunch of different stuff, and like whatever's wrong or whatever you need to make work to make the product succeed, you just got to do that. It's like, it doesn't matter what it is, just like help.
Yeah.
And where it breaks down is maybe like a more literal interpretation of like CEO, like you have all the power, you can make whatever change you want.
Yeah, and I actually think one big distinction between being a CEO and being a product manager is a CEO has actual power over the different components of a product and a business, where people report to you, and you can effectively, for lack of a more elegant way of saying it, you can tell them what to do.
Yeah.
Whereas for a PM, typically you're not managing a large organization. You maybe have a couple PMs that report to you.
Right.
Very rarely you'll have engineering reporting to you, but for the most part, everybody that you need to influence, it's all soft power.
Yeah.
You need to convince them of the right path forward. And that's a pretty big distinction between what a CEO might be doing and then what a PM actually is doing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good point. Tell me a little bit about, in that role and being a PM and having to influence with soft power and kind of project. How do you think about effectively wielding that soft power? Like, how do you establish it? How do you do it in a way that is productive versus destructive in a team environment? What have you found that works?
The first step is generally building credibility with those different teams. Mm-hmm. For me, I really enjoy working with engineering teams. So I usually start out by working very closely with them to understand their interests, their motivations, why they're working on the product, and ultimately the things that help them or help get buy-in from them of the direction that we're going to go.
And how do you do that? Like, how do you understand from the engineers, like, what they care about? Why? Like, is that sitting down coffee chats? Like, tactically, how does that happen?
There can be coffee chats, one-on-ones. I found that going through our actual roadmap and discussing each of the line items and the justification in a setting that's very focused on let's look long-term as opposed to let's plan the next sprint can help engineering teams feel more comfortable with the direction we're going, and also have a shared vision about why they're working on certain things.
Gotcha. Like provide almost a forum for them to say like, oh yeah, like this makes a lot of sense, but like, I don't know why this is on the road.
Yeah, I don't understand this one. Why aren't we doing this thing? Having others feel like they have a voice in what that direction is ultimately helps get that, buy-in, trust, and everything else from them.
What have you seen, or, if you have, PMs like trying to kind of build the soft power, like they're trying to do the right thing, but they like seem to get it wrong and it backfires? Like, are there ways that people commonly get this wrong? Because I do think it's a tough thing to manage. Mm-hmm. What have you seen there?
Yeah, I've found one of the areas where folks occasionally struggle is being too directive in what they're communicating. Because ultimately with that, soft power and influence, you don't have the ability to tell someone we're going to do this exact thing. Instead, you need to convince them, you need to get the buy-in, you need to build the story. And so if someone's just focused on, here's the list of items we need to do, that generally is much less successful than, let me show you the story of where we want to go. and get the buy-in, and then we can talk about the specific tasks that will help us get there.
So like, here's the vision, here's where we want to go. Let's kind of collaboratively like figure out what the steps are to get there. Something like that.
Right.
Yeah.